Hi, everyone. My name's Jeff Johnson, and welcome to Humanities 101, where we take a look at basically all things involving human culture from approximately about 2 million BC to the present. As you can imagine, that's a pretty wide swath, so no, we're not going to be talking about everything per se, but we just basically choose from the wide gamut of things that happen or have happened in human culture from basically that time up until the year 1500. We're obviously going to be taking bits and pieces and making choices and talking about certain general characteristics with regard to the rise of early human civilization, and then later with particularly notable civilizations. We'd love to be able to cover all of it, or certainly I'd love to be able to cover all of it, but I have to make certain choices, and we'll talk about that as we move along through the course. One of the things I want to get into, or at least start off with, is when we talk about the humanities, what exactly am I referring to? First of all, the humanities is not a discipline like, say, literature or physics or anthropology or psychology. And what I mean by that is that when you take a look in those particular disciplines, there's a very narrow focus or a very narrow concern. For example, if you're talking in, say, a discipline like business, you're focused, primarily on economic systems or how to make an enterprise work in a particular economic system. If you're looking at, say, chemistry, obviously you're looking at the chemical world and kind of relate the natural world or understand the natural world in those terms. And if we went on to talk about literature, in a literature course, you're going to be focusing on either poetry, short stories. You're going to be likely to look primarily at the written word. In the humanities, what we do is we take an interdisciplinary approach. And by that, I mean we're going to be talking about a number of different things that fall under a wide variety of different subject headings. Um, Spending time looking at anthropology, looking at biology, looking at issues regarding climate, rather issues regarding business. Then we look at culture. We look at military science even. But there's a wide range of different things that we look at. The idea here with the humanities is we're trying to come to an understanding of human culture, either at different points in time, or we're trying to look at particular civilizations to see what are the sort of general tenets of that civilization. And in the process of doing it, we're not trying to concentrate necessarily on specific key historical figures, but rather on a civilization as a whole. The reason I mention that is it's often one of the things that happens when you take a look at, say, a history class or you look at culture. You might say, well, we're going to focus on this king or this ruler. As you will find many times in these classes, we're going to be looking at the lives of what we might say common folk and taking a look at their relation and how they live in the context of these cultures. If I can go on here to kind of stress, the other thing that we're going to be trying to do is we're trying to move away from certain notions. One of the notions that I want to get through or dispel early on in the course is this notion of, shall we say, primitive versus advanced. We're going to find that that's kind of problematic. The other thing is that we're going to try to resist necessarily looking at culture in terms of a, shall we say, a linear development, because often we find that there are certain developments that will happen on a cyclical base with cultures. The other thing is that I try to make a connection between these cultures of the past and talk about what's actually happening in the present, because often we can find a parallel. And this might seem like an odd one, but I'm going to do this right now. Here you have your, standard smartphone. You take a look at the size of it. This is about the same size as the average Mesopotamian writing tablet. And if we talk about the Mesopotamians, they are one of the first civilizations associated with, writing. And what they did with their writing early on is they would take wet clay tablets and press a wedge-shaped stick, which was kind of a stylus, if you will, into the tablet to create cuneiform or some of the first writing. Interestingly enough, now obviously we're not basically creating writing on the tablet per se, but it's basically the same interface that we have in terms of trying to communicate and get the word out. And so we don't necessarily move away from those things. Now, as we go through the course, we're going to be covering a number of different things. And one of the things that I also am going to be stressing in here is that we take a world cultures approach. We're going to be spending time in Asia. We're going to be spending time in the Americas. We're going to be spending time in Africa as well as in Europe. And in the process of doing that, there may be places where I don't necessarily have the opportunity to go and expand and spend time on particular cultures, but I do leave open for students in the class who are interested in that certain areas or places where, in response to, say, a writing prompt that I might have for later on in the course, a place where you can actually go in and engage in that individual exploration and help yourself along in the class. Anyway, there's a lot more that I could have to talk to you about, or I do have to talk to you about. But right now, I want to kind of keep it simple because I know that I'm probably not the most exciting person in the world. And I feel like when I'm doing a video with you, I probably want to keep it under 10 minutes. Being as this is the first video, I'm going to stop at 6.5. Bye.